Mio on MMA. It's a Sunday. So, you're getting a review of last night's card. And it was a banger card. From a viewing standpoint, all of these fights were fun, interesting, worth watching. That doesn't mean I'm happy with all the fighters. that doesn't mean that there isn't some significant drops in stock on this card for fighters and particularly judges, because the judging on this card, and to be clear, there wasn't a lot of judging on this card. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decisions, of which I would say I fundamentally disagree with one of them. And then I have a real bad feeling about one of the scorecards on another one. Not who won, but just the logic that got to that point is highly questionable. And also in the Landwehr Onama fight, there is some significant problems with how that fight was scored by, I think, one judge, because one judge gave Onama the third round, and I'm just not here for it. And we'll be talking about that in a second. Not in a second, but in a bit. I do want to quickly talk about news going around outside of MMA, or not outside of MMA, but within the MMA sphere that wasn't to do with this fight card directly. BJ Penn lost his bid for Republican governor nominee in Hawaii. That's probably a good thing, because honestly, if you listen to his interview on Joe Rogan, any other political talk, BJ Penn doesn't know how the American political system works, doesn't have any real fundamental ideas that would have qualified him to be the governor. And I do hope that this is sort of the end of MMA fighters going into politics. There's probably an exception. There is probably an exception. Someone within the MMA sphere who has a really, really good grasp of politics, even if I don't necessarily agree with them, that could probably make a run in politics and actually be an interesting candidate. But BJ Penn was never that. Just was never that. And I'm opening a bottle of water here, Fruit 20. Not a sponsorship deal or anything. I don't know why I do that. I do tend to, on my Twitch streams, even reveal what I'm drinking. Speaking of Twitch streams, I'm gonna go live in a couple of hours for a 6-hour stream, and that's gonna be some serious vocal fry. We'll see how that goes. So I will be drinking throughout this recording. And I had an interesting confrontation with someone on social media who actually believes that MMA fighters are overpaid. And the justification is they make more than teachers, they make more than firefighters. I want to make this quite clear. Whenever I talk about MMA fighter pay, I want to make it clear that I believe almost every profession is to a degree underpaid. Because, with the exception of basically executive classes, I am, in my profession, an accountant, financial guy. I do taxes. I do financial analyst things, checking on credit reports on companies. I am currently involved as a junior auditor on a job. And almost all of this basically shows that a tremendous number of companies pay executives a boatload of money for essentially very, very little work. So it's not that I don't believe that a CEO, such as Dana White, for example, doesn't deserve to get paid. It's just that the proportions that are going on in almost any industry are batshit crazy. And with MMA fighters, there's a particular note here that okay, as a society, we overvalue performers. There isn't really a reason that professional athletes should make what they do. Actors, comedians, musicians, etc. But there is no doubt that people pay a tremendous amount of money to watch the fights, and that is the profits we're talking about here. The UFC is a $1 billion promotion. And when it comes down to it, the UFC fighters should see a significant portion of that, and they don't. And bringing in other industries that are also underpaid into the conversation just is not overly productive. My apologies. You guys may have heard a sound there. I think probably on the YouTube video. I'm going to mute the speakers here. There we go. That'll be fixed, but I think on the audio only podcast, you probably didn't hear anything. So it was really weird to have a conversation with someone who honestly believes MMA fighters are underpaid. And then, of course, this whole thing of like Dana White saying they get what they should get. This card is a perfect example. Nate Landwehr made... I've got the payments out here. Nate Landwehr here made $60,000. That's including his $30,000 win bonus. Now, after the fight of the night bonus, which I believe he got, we're talking $110,000. Okay, cool. Fine. But even within the internal logic of the UFC, Nate Landwehr is making $30,000. Jason Witt is making $23,000 just to show up. Which of those fighters is a more valuable fighter? And like, here's the thing. Coming into this, is Nate Landwehr an inherently more valuable fighter than Jason Witt? No. But after that performance, is Landwehr going to get paid more? Is Landwehr, assuming this wasn't the last fight on his contract or something, is he going to get a random boost from his $30,000 baseline to, I don't know, $75,000? Probably more than double that. Now that he's like shown off, 1, mic skills, 2, an ability to fight someone high level and win and do it in an incredibly exciting fashion. Like, fight of the year has been bandied about. I never like to say fight of the year because inevitably I forgot something great that happened earlier in the year that is going to come back and bite me, or it's too early in the year to really talk about that. But like, Nate Landwehr had a incredible performance and is not going to get a raise off of that, despite the fact that there is probably an increased interest in his fights. So even if you believe the literal percentage going to the fighters is correct, that also doesn't work, because although there would be an adjustment fight to fight to fight to fight, if you fight a good fight, an exciting fight, get the win, whatever, you would get a raise, which you don't do until the end of the contract. And other people will be like, they signed the contract. That I can, to a degree, respect. I think it ignores the market constraints on the fighters right now, but it at least holds up an internal logic that you sign the contract, you should have to deal with it. But like, the UFC signs the contract and then cuts people. So shouldn't that go both ways? That a contract is a contract is a contract, and that should be set in stone, that if the UFC signs someone to a 6-fight deal, let's say, or a 5-fight deal, that they'll get 5 fights, and the UFC won't continuously try to threaten legal, not legal action, but professional hindrance action for people not signing a re-up, essentially. Because that is the thing. Like, that's the thing about like the Nate Diaz problem, for example. Part of the reason he's accepted this Khamzat Chimaev fight, and why he proposed it, although it is a fight that has been offered at various points, was that I will take the fight if we finally stop this nonsense of you offering me a fight that with it comes with a contract extension, because I want out. And if you can't see this power imbalance, I don't know what to say. If you don't care about the power imbalance, the financial considerations here, that is your prerogative. But there's this weird, passionate debate from people that the fighter pay is good, the fighter pay is actually too much, blah, 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 that doesn't equal not caring. It's actively defending a fighter pay. Like, it's actively being part of the conversation. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, I don't care about fighter pay, and here's why it should change. Because that would be disingenuous. I clearly do care. Anyways, enough on the fighter pay. We've gone like 9 minutes in this video, and there's a lot to say about this card. I do have some things to say about Bellator and stuff. So let's start at the top, as we always do. Marlon Cheeto Vera, Dominic Cruz, and I was incredibly nervous with this fight. I picked Vera under the assumption that at some point he would be able to hurt Cruz. Cruz's durability, Cruz's speed is on the downward slope. But he's still an incredibly intelligent fighter. Cheeto Vera has had a hard time dealing with somebody elusive, that has range, that has the ability to sort of pick him apart because Vera is most of the time fairly low output. Like, he can be high output. He can be baited in that. The Jose Aldo fight, for example, is a good example of this. But he's kind of really just like a big old pot shotter. And the fight started how I kind of feared. Dominic Cruz was out there working his game, darting in and out of the pocket, doing his thing. Cheeto got very little done in the first and the second round outside of a flash knockdown. And some people wanted to give Cheeto the first round off of that. I kind of disagree. Hang on, let me pull up the stats for the fight because we'll want to be able to refer to it. Obviously, the box score is not everything, but Dom Cruz 21-9 in the first round. Yes, there was a knockdown. Yes, there was the most impactful moment of the fight or of the round did go to Cheeto Vera, but it's not enough. There were 2 takedowns there, but honestly, 2 takedowns for 49 seconds. No, this was a striking round. The grappling aspects of this round of this fight in general, I'm not really going to touch on much. There was, what's the total here? 5 seconds, 54 seconds, 1 minute 10, 1 minute and 15 seconds of technical grappling time happened during this fight. So there is nothing to break down scoring wise there. Although Cruz was using the takedowns as a good way of like being able to keep Vera off balance, to accentuate an issue that Vera has had before, which is his defensive wrestling is not particularly amazing. It's what lost him his fight way back in the day to Davey Grant. It's what has been a pathway to at least momentary success against him in a number of other fights. And Cruz used that here to keep him off balance. Also dumped him down with like kind of the tie dump when he caught a kick. Second round, very much was the Cruz round. This was the best round Cruz had. Outlanded him 32-19. Didn't get hurt. Looked pretty good. So 2 rounds up, Dominic Cruz heading into the third round. And this is where Cheeto Vera picked up his volume and started to come up with significant solutions to what was going on. In the second round, he kind of did. Like, there were a couple of nice body kicks he landed on Dominic Cruz that started to like hinder Cruz's lateral mobility. And I think probably did actually hurt his leg a little bit and slow him down. I'm surprised he went away from that because that was an interesting solution in the second round. He didn't really do it a ton. If I look at this, Vera, targets. Yeah, still mostly headhunting, which is interesting because you would think that after having success with that in the second round, he would continue in the third and the fourth, and he really didn't. But you know what? He didn't need to. So by the third round, he's got some solutions. He's starting to put the pain onto Dominic Cruz, landing the better shots, the cleaner shots, the harder shots. Absolutely the harder shots. And I gave him the third round. He also had a knockdown here. And pretty much at this point, I was like kind of not comfortable that Vera was going to win. Not like this is a done deal, but this was the point where like I'm like, yeah, this is kind of where it's going to go now. Like Vera's starting to hurt him on a regular basis. He's starting to corral him, make him stand in front of him, cut the cage off a little bit. He's kind of not found a solution for everything because I don't think anyone's ever going to solve Dominic Cruz entirely. But he had solved him enough that he was starting to get the job done. And Cruz's leg also looked kind of done at this point. He was favoring I believe it was the left leg that he was favoring a bit, dragging it a little bit, looking a little bit rough. And a big part of why I thought Vera would win this fight is that Cruz, for all of his skill, and it's an immensely deep well of skill, one of the greatest transformations in MMA history, GOAT status at the weight class, going from kind of just a wrestler to this kind of maestro of range management and striking and bringing back some old school boxing movement and stuff that admittedly probably has been part of the degradation of his legs and specifically his knees, but also has made him an incredibly hard fighter to deal with. And all of that said, the fact that he never really was going to be able to finish or significantly hurt Vera always made me worry that once Vera turned the tide against him, it was going to stay turned. And indeed, in the fourth round, head kick knockout, Cheeto was starting to really find things. This was the first round where officially he outlanded him. And I'm not remembering the second knockdown. There were apparently two. I'm not remembering the second one. Maybe I thought it occurred in the third round. Maybe that's the problem. But knocked him down twice in the round. Got the finish. Got the job done. And I mean, someone pointed out that Cheeto Vera's big wins are all over people 35 or older, and that is a concern. He was ignoring the Sean O'Malley win because he didn't believe it was a big win. I still I do think that Sean O'Malley's a big win, but like if you think about his biggest wins, Rob Font, Dominic Cruz, Frankie Edgar. While we didn't really think about Font as past his best, I did have to quickly look it up and go, yeah, Font is 35. There's a chance that he's kind of fading, and that was part of why he won. So I'm reserved in my excitement. Like, there are people hopping up and down, like Vera for title, Vera going for the title shot. I would kind of like to see him fight someone more in their prime, because if we look at his run here, his very, very good run here, it is Dom Cruz, who's definitely faded. Frankie Edgar, definitely favorite. Rob Font, kind of have to see him take some shots before I think he's maybe lost some durability. And like Davey Grant, also kind of faded guy. And then the loss to Aldo, the win over O'Malley, the loss to Yadong Song, all suggest that there is probably some truth to the fact that Vera is catching guys on the downside, and it's making him look a bit better than expected. But on Vera's side, you can only do what they give you. And I actually did not realize he had lost to Yadong Song here. I do now remember that fight, but this is one of the things when I was talking about Nick's fight. I wanted to see him fight the winner of Sandhagen versus Yadong Song. And I didn't realize he'd already fought Yadong Song. But you know what? I would be more than happy to see that as a rematch if Song gets past Cody Sandhagen. Is it Cody or is it Corey Sandhagen? I don't know why. I don't know why I can never remember which it is with him. Honestly. Real talk. I really can't remember why I have a hard time remembering Sandhagen's. It's Corey Sandhagen. Is there a Cody Sandhagen in another sport that I'm constantly mixing him up with? I don't know. Vera gets the job done, and I would love to see him fight the winner of that fight, because those are two guys who are in their prime. They are young. They are both, I think, actually still getting better. They haven't hit their apex yet. And that would be an interesting test for Marlon Cheeto Vera. So I wouldn't rush him into title contention, but this was definitely a very good performance. And it wasn't just that he hit Cruz really hard. He was actively starting to solve problems and keeping Cruz in front of him more frequently as the fight goes on. How much of that is Cruz being a little bit faded? How much of that is Cheeto displaying relatively high fight IQ and adjustment ability? I don't know. And that's what I want to find out. For Cruz, I originally had the idea of Rob Font as a sort of a guy who would present some challenges, but like is at a similar sort of physical decline. And of course, both got beat by Cheeto Vera in, to a degree, similar methods, because like obviously Cruz got finished, Font didn't, but at the same time, Font landed more, Cruz landed more. Like guys who were probably technically beating Vera in terms of like which one of these is more textbook responses and who's landing more punches, who has the more repeatable success and all of that, but that Vera just kind of outgunned. But also, I was listening to the 6th round when I went out today to get some groceries, and the idea of Dominic Cruz and Frankie Edgar was put up. And I can't say I disagree with that. Like, I mean, two guys who are not seemingly open to retiring yet, that I do worry about a little bit every time they fight is going to be the last time we see them at any kind of real competitive level. So, hey, why not do that? Of course, there's a question of what to do with Rob Font, but that's a topic for another day. So it was a great finish to the night. It wasn't a sad fight. It was Cruz still showing us that there is Dominic Cruz, that there still is a little bit of magic left in the tank, that there is all the things that made him the best bantamweight in the world for a significant portion of time, that injuries derailed, is still there. But at the same time, there is also definitely a fading going on that makes him kind of not at that absolute S tier level of a weight class that is very, very good. And he's kind of faded into an A or maybe even a B tier fighter. But it's not sad to watch him fight yet, so I have no calls for retirement, although I wouldn't also object to it. I've said this a number of times. I don't think that there is such a thing as retiring too early from MMA. I really don't. The finances of the sport right now just don't justify taking the punishment that a lot of these guys do later into their career. And Cruz is a smart guy, has the commentary / analyst gig. One would think he has the ability to do something else if he wants. But we'll find out. David Onama versus Nate Landwehr. I got this fight wrong. Overall, what did I do on this card? It's not going to be good. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, kinda, because I picked Budai and he shouldn't have won, and we'll talk about that. I picked Benitez, so I went 5 and 5, 7 and 1, which is not good. Not a great showing, although I will say a lot of the losses I took, I think, actually went kind of how I thought they were going to go if the fighter lost. So I'll take solace in that, I guess. Nate Landwehr got the job done here against David Onama. Very early on, it was very clear that if Landwehr stuck at range with David Onama, he was going to get beat up. Like that at the kicking range, the outside striking range, the kickboxing range, whatever you want to call it, Onama was much better than Landwehr, which is not surprising. The problem, however, was, two parts. Onama wasn't maintaining that range, which admittedly is something that troubled him against Mason Jones. And when it was in the pocket, Landwehr was getting a lot done, and the clinch a lot done, and the wrestling a lot done. On the ground, he probably should have gone for less anaconda / Darce chokes because Onama kept getting out of them. And he probably could have done more if he just kind of stabilized and pounded away. But despite a really good start, like a verge of a 10-8 first round for Onama, where he was lighting Landwehr up and having his way with Nate Landwehr. Let's pull up the strike counter here again. Outlanded him 46-21 on significant strikes. Total strikes were 43-29. And I want to say most of those 29 strikes came at the end of the round because Landwehr was getting beat down. And then he stormed back in the last minute or so and probably saved himself from a 10-8 because it was a 10-9, I think, universally. He managed to get back into it, and Onama looked tired. Onama looked like that head shook him to his core, that he might have actually... they've only got one drop here, but I'm pretty sure Landwehr got dropped twice, actually. And it was a hell of a comeback. Nate Landwehr is a super tough dude, and he goes out there in the second round. And part of it is Onama, again, being a complete mess. Like, willing to wrestle with Landwehr and losing out every time, getting hurt, getting caught in the anacondas, but really getting out of the chokes. And Landwehr 10-8s him. Landwehr does an amazing job. He goes out there and he says, I am not done. You're done. And 10-8 across the board. I think all three judges gave it a 10-8. And then we go to the third round. And I mean, Onama is looking really bad in the corner. James Krause is asking him, do you want to fight? Do you want to continue? Do you want to go on? And we know Cruz is not going to throw in the towel because that's not something he's going to do. It's not something most MMA corners are going to do. Maybe he should have, but I will say this. Onama did find himself at the end of the third round. And in the last minute, he really turned it on. Huge flurry. Had Landwehr hurt. And probably saved himself from a 10-8. Because the rest of the third round was Landwehr landing kind of at will. Marching him down. Putting him on his back. Waving him back up, I think 2 or 3 times. Like full on, like turning his back and going, get up, and like hyping the crowd up, which is not a good idea, but probably won some fans. And somehow one judge, Mike Bell, gave the third round to David Onama. And I'm going to say some nice things about Mike Bell later. I am, actually, legitimately am. But he fucked up his scorecard here, and this should have been a unanimous decision, not a majority decision. And here's the thing. People will say, what's the big deal? Landwehr gets to win. And sure, it doesn't look as nice on Tapology or Fight Finder or Wikipedia. When you look at it, it says majority decision instead of unanimous decision. But anyone who watched this fight, and I'm sure people who missed this live are going to be told they need to go watch this fight, are going to appreciate Nate Landwehr for what he is, which is an incredible warrior. But it's those little mistakes, those little things, that one round wrong, that add up into bad decisions that affect winners' bonuses, affect title shots, affect careers. And they should be looked at very, very seriously. And Mike Bell has historically not been a very good judge. So there you go. Not a good moment for like the Seth Fuller logic where, I don't know if I talked about this, but Seth Fuller, the judge from last week's card, had a whole defense about his scoring for Hamdi Abdel Wahad and Dontel Mays. I kind of liked what he was talking about the scoring because like it's the thing I want. I want the explanations from the judges when they quote unquote get it wrong. I want to know the logic and the rationale, and he provided that. He broke it down that there were 2 specific moments that he thought Mays hurt Abdel Wahad badly enough to win the round. I still disagree, but like it wasn't that bad. But a lot of the rest of the interview was him talking about how judges shouldn't be second guessed because they are incredibly experienced people. Here's the thing. Experience is good. In any part of your life, experience is good. But it is not on its own a reason to trust somebody to do the job correctly, because Sal D'Amato, Cecil Peoples, Jeff Mullen, for example, I've referenced this. Jeff Mullen once gave an interview. This was years and years ago. I think when he sort of was leaving the judging profession, where he talked about, and this is a guy who'd been judging UFC fights for years, maybe not 10 years, but like pretty close to it. And he talked about how he actually had his own entirely different set of criteria for scoring the fights. Like he talked about what he scored. And there were things he did not score, straight up. Now, if a month in advance for the fight, you were told Jeff Mullen is scoring your fight, and this is the criteria Jeff Mullen uses, you could prepare for that. But it's not a fair statement to have a judge, a senior judge, who uses a different criteria than what is stated as the criteria. And yet that went on for years. So the idea that, like, he references Steve Armstrong in the interview, that Steve Armstrong was at UFC 5 and he was in Guy Mesger's corner, and that in itself is why you should trust Steve Armstrong to know what he's talking about, is faulty. Because there are judges who have been in the sport for a long time that we know are not good at their job, but they still judge some of the highest profile fights. So that's ridiculous. And anyways, back to this fight. This fight was fantastic. I have significant worries about David Onama coming out of it. His fight IQ for the second and the third round and even the first round, not good. Not good at all. You had a facet of the fight that you were winning very easily in, and you did not either did not have the wherewithal to maintain it, or you didn't have the technical attributes to maintain it. And both of those are very, very disturbing. He's still young, still very athletic, but there is he needs to learn from this fight. Otherwise, there's gonna be problems. And talk about like Landwehr's career kind of like really changing around here, because even before this fight, like Landwehr, I want to say is like a 500 fighter in the UFC coming into this. I could be mistaken. I really could. He beat Ludovic Klein and beat Ludovic Klein and Darren Elkins and lost to Herbert Burns and Julian Erosa. So he had a 2-2 record coming into this fight. This is his 5th fight in the UFC. And the win over Klein is aging so very well, because Klein went out there and put a beating on Mason Jones. And now he's beaten David Onama. What a turnaround. He called out Billy Quarantillo and Shane Burgos post-fight. I will not give him Billy Quarantillo, because I want my Billy Quarantillo, my Billy Q versus Bill Algeo fight. And no one should get in the way of that, please. But my lord, Shane Burgos, yes. Yes, please. Burgos is a guy who has the range advantage, has some physical advantages over Landwehr, but has like a lot of the same fight IQ issues as David Onama. And I'm fine with seeing that is a great fight. And for Onama, I penciled in Canwella Kirk just because I think those are two prospects that both are kind of like in no man's land right now, where it's like, I haven't given up on you. No one should give up on them yet. But they both have major, major things that they need to address. And let's see them fight each other while they're trying to figure that out. Yasmin Haragui, if I didn't pronounce that correctly, I apologize, versus Jasmine Lucindo. This was a very, very good fight. Very entertaining fight. High-paced. Both of them showed amazing gas tanks. What did they land in this fight? They landed about 150 strikes between the two of them. I think it's 152 sig strikes between the two of them. And it was good. It was low level, kind of like we thought. They're both very, very green fighters. Have a lot to learn, have a lot to develop. But like baseline skills are there. They both don't have any obvious physical limitations, which is nice. They're both reasonably fast. I do think Yaragui, who's been a fight finisher on the regional scene, might not really have a great deal of power. And that's something she's going to have to come to grips with. But she has the volume, the speed, and obviously the cardio. And actually reasonably good decision-making. That may not be a huge limiting factor. I will say I scored this fight for Lucindo, on the basis that Lucindo, I thought, hit a little bit harder, was a little bit more effective with what she had. She was outlanded in all 3 rounds, though. I have no problem with Rob McCarthy's card. I do have a little bit of a problem with the other 2 cards. Not that they scored it for Yaragui. Like I said, I think that is perfectly fine. But the weird thing is that on the 2 29-28 cards, Lucindo won the first round. And looking at the numbers, that kind of looks like that makes sense, because she was only outlanded by 6 strikes in that round, which was the closest dividing moment. But I thought that the 3rd round was where Lucindo did that the quality of Yaragui's strikes had fallen off by that point. And that was probably the best round Lucindo had. So if Lucindo was going to win 1 round and Yaragui 2, I think it's 1 and 2 to Yaragui, 3rd round to Lucindo, but I'm not especially angry at this one. But it is Derek Cleary and Sal D'Amato who have fucked up numerous decisions. This is going to have to get an explicit rating, because I'm probably going to drop a couple F-bombs. I'm talking about the judging. It gets under my skin. It gets under my skin. What's next for these 2 girls? I really don't know, because like the problem is that they were both kind of blank slates to me in terms of like their abilities. So it's like you both looked good, but you both looked good against a level of competition that is unknown. We'll put it that way. Unknown where they fit. So for Yaragui, I penciled in Silvana Gomez Juarez as somebody who has a pretty reasonable striking game and some good counters and a little bit of like horsepower behind it that I would like to see see how she answers it. And it's a slow enough build that I think it's fair. And then for Lucindo, the loser of Super Melly Martinez and Elise Reed, I think, because both of them would ask two separate questions. Like Reed is a range striker who's much better at keeping the range than Yargui is, so that would be an intriguing fight. And then Martinez is just like a reasonably good athlete. Like I don't have a lot of nice things to say about Martinez's technical skill set, but like I do have faith in her raw physicality, and that would be an interesting test for Lucindo as well. Now, I will say, for someone who is more or less a takedown and jiu-jitsu player on the regional scene, Lucindo did not play the wrestling game at this fight at all. So I do have questions about the fight IQ there. Devin Clark versus Azamat Mirzakhanov. I need to take a drink here. Just give me a sec. Okay. My biggest takeaway from this fight is Devin Clark does actually need to get his dad out of his corner. Now, I will say, people have said that like his dad's yelling is both entertaining and that it inspires Devin Clark. And it may. It may. The entertaining is subjective. I don't find it entertaining myself, but it may indeed help him hulk up, so to speak, and like gang hard. A fear of disappointing his dad, I guess. But his dad actually actively yells over his coaches. Like at the end of, I want to say it was the second round. This finish came in the third round, right? At the end of the second round, he was yelling so much that the corner could not give advice. And he was just yelling, "You gotta fight! You gotta fight! You gotta fight!" Which, as a hype-up mechanic, maybe has value. But he needs to know how. He needs to have technical answers to what Mirzakhanov is doing. So I think that's a hindrance. I really do. And I would like to see his dad get out of the corner or alternatively shut up while they are trying to give technical advice to his son. And I can't say that this fight has like changed my mind on Mirzakhanov. Like he's still a small 205er, which he's admitted he could probably make middleweight. And he's short, under 6 feet tall at middleweight, or at 205 is short. He is strong. He is physical. He has a lot of good things. Like he has a good sense of timing and a good sense of accuracy and finding his reach really well. And his footwork does allow him to walk down and mitigate the fact that he's going to be at a reach disadvantage a lot of the time. But like at the same time in the first round, Clark was able to hurt him with a high kick and also to probably win the round. I want to say he may. The strikes were total strikes were 17-12, most of which were not significant. And so Clark landed the most significant strike of the round, and Devin Clark is not a amazing maestro kickboxer. So there is still like my concerns that like a sort of low output, lacking in reach fighter is going to at some point just lose fights on kind of volume and on the margins. But every time he hit Clark, especially from the second round onwards, Clark was Clark was getting hurt pretty consistently. Like he was hurt a number of times before he finally got dropped in the second round. And then I do like that Mirzakhanov goes down to the ground and starts smashing into the ribs with ground and pound. It's a good idea, I think, especially against a fighter who, in Clark, is both significantly tough and yet fragile durability somehow at the same time. And eventually in the third round, Mirzakhanov knocks him down, finishes him on the ground, and gets the W. He's now 2-0 in the UFC, but like Again, I hate to bring up the fighter pay, but Azamat Murzakanov won a Dana White Contender Series fight that got him a 12-12 contract. I think it was 10-10 for the first fight and then 12-12 for this fight. He made $24,000 here today, getting the biggest win of his career. And the guy he beat on Dana White Contender Series, Matthias Scheffel, will fight for $1 million in PFL. Tell me again about how this works. Tell me again. Anyways, for Murzakonov's next fight, I would love to see him fight Kennedy Nchukwu, because it would test both of them, I think, on areas I need to know. Nchukwu is going to be way taller, way longer engagement envelope for him. So that's the thing. Like, how do you deal with a tall dude? Because the two dudes he's fought so far are kind of not blessed with tremendous range striking technique and are not particularly tall 205ers themselves. And in Nchukwu's case, how do you deal with someone who can walk you down and hurt you? And one of them, and possibly both, are going to get a chance to answer their questions. For Devin Clark, a step way down in competition is probably needed. Put him in there with Ihor Porteria, the guy who just lost to Nikolai Negumereanu. I think that's kind of the level that we probably need to talk about. I have one word written underneath Ariane Lipski and Priscilla Cachoeira, which was fuck. And Lipski just got melted by Priscilla Cachoeira. Went out there, brawled with her, got finished. Not much more to say. Cachoeira versus Natalia Silva next would be cool. Lipski versus Victoria Leonardo. Lipski is a cautionary tale, I think, of like marrying your coach, because she's a girl who, at various points in her career, has shown off an ability to be so much more than she is, but she reverts back to mean so much and desperately needs to change in training. But when you're married to your coach, how do you do that? Just from a practical level. Gerald Mearshart, Bruno Silva. I was so confident in Bruno Silva and so wrong. So wrong. Mearshart comes out in the first round. He's looking comfortable on the feet, gets the ground game going a little bit, and then knocks him down and finishes him with the choke. Like, every so often, Gerald Mearshart just pulls it out there. In the third round, he gets in there, submits him with the guillotine choke. There's not much to say. Like, Silva looked bad. Silva looked bad. So, like, how much of this is Mearshart putting on a masterful display of one of his best fights, and how much of this was Silva just kind of, I don't know. Was there an injury we didn't know about? Was there something in a bad camp going on there? I don't know, but it was not a good look. And Mearshart called out Petrosky afterwards. Petrosky has called him out. Do it. For Bruno Silva, nothing strong. No strong thing. I put the loser of Anthony Hernandez, Marc-Andre Barrio. Apparently those two are fighting, which is a good fight. And they'd be a good fight with Bruno Silva. Angel Hill, Lupita Godinez. This was the annoying fight for me, because I picked Godinez. And it's not just that I picked her and she lost and whatever, but like, after hurting Hill in the first round, Godinez just kind of spammed the same 1-2 combo repetitively. And there was a cool guillotine reversal by Hill in the second round. But it was just dumb. Like, we just saw Godinez put on this great display against Ariane Carnelossi. And Carnelossi is not the fighter in terms of nuance, in terms of skill depth, in terms of experience that Angela Hill is. And very few people are. But to see Godinez just, like, not in any way look to do what was successful against Carnelossi was disturbing. It was annoying. Because what she did against Carnelossi was strike into the clinch, take it down, work the scramble and top game. And she rejected the clinch several times with Hill in this fight. She rejected the chances to, like, implement that game. And as much as I want to feel great about this fight from Angela Hill's perspective, and she got to win, so like I do. But this was more to do with Godinez just failing to implement a cogent game plan, to implement what she should have fought with. And that is, to me, always the most frustrating thing. I've been calling for Godinez versus Luana Pinheiro for a while. That's still what I'm calling for. That's my female version of Quarantillo versus Algio. It's the fight I'm going to call for repetitively. And for Angela Hill, maybe you have her fight like Emily Ducote, because I think at this point we know there's a hard ceiling on Angela Hill. We've seen her lose admittedly close fights against a number of the top fighters in the division. And at some point we need to just put her in fun fights. And Ducote and her, I think, would be a fun fight. Let it happen. Lucas Bresky got robbed against Martin Budai. I'm just going to talk about the numbers for this fight. Again, the numbers don't tell everything. Someone on Twitter was trying to argue with me that the second round was really, really close. Here are the 6 strike numbers. 41-25 in the first round for Bresky, 43-19 for Bresky in the second round, and 34-22 for Bresky in the third round. Outlanded him in all 3 rounds. I don't have a problem with the Budai winning round 3, because I thought that some of his counters looked really, really solid in that round. By the way, Michael Bell, the judge I mentioned earlier that screwed up, he got this one right. Sal D'Amato and Elliot Kelly gave the second round to Budai. I don't understand it. Again, fighting is not just who landed more strikes. I understand that. I understand that Budai probably does, because he's a big, strong, powerful dude, land a little bit more or land a little harder. That his strikes are a little bit more impactful and count for more than an individual strike from Bresky, who doesn't appear to be the most powerful of striker. But people are like, oh my God, no, those leg kicks won him the round. Those leg kicks were huge. They were huge. How? Was Bresky's leg compromised at any point? Was he not moving well on it, aside from being tired? Was he knocked down? Was he visibly swollen up or cut or superficially damaged in any particularly way other than just being in a heavyweight fight? Was he staggered? Was he stopped in his tracks by Budai at some point? The answer to all of these is no. This was a terrible, terrible decision. And Sal D'Amato is a terrible, terrible judge. He's on my Mount Rushmore of shitty, shitty judges. I don't really know Elliot Kelly all that well. He's mostly done CW cards prior to this. So, there you go. Cage Warriors American cards, oddly. He's done some Bellator work as well. I do believe I disagreed with his score in the Crutchmeyer versus Lombardo fight that he scored in Bellator as well. I'm not going to go back and watch that fight because it wasn't good enough. But bad signs. And this is really the end of the talk about the judging, because I think the remaining 2 scorecards, aside from the Derek Cleary giving Calvillo the fight against Nunez, really don't need a lot of talking about. But like, what does this mean for the 2 fighters? I mean, I thought Bresky looked pretty good. Like, he faded, but like he fights well tired, which is a necessary skill for a heavyweight who's going to fight at a high pace, because you are going to get tired. And he's super tough. And I again, Budai is not some great fighter. Budai's whole thing is like kind of like strong and tough, and with a really underrated clinch game that he didn't really get to utilize here. So like it's a good performance, but I don't think it's transformative for Bresky, and I don't think it's transformative for Budai, because he lost this fight. Even though he got the win, and the UFC will probably treat him like a winner, because it seems like Dana really likes Martin Budai. I don't know. I'm left feeling better about Bresky, and to a degree, I'm even left feeling better about Budai going forward. But I still don't see like great things for either guy. And I don't know. Like the judging for this fight just kind of like overrides anything about the actual fight for me. But it was fun. And next for Budai, the winner of Tanner Bozer and Nascimento, whose first name I'm blanking on, Rodrigo Nascimento. They're going to fight. Give him the winner of that. The loser of Jake Collier and Chris Barnett. I think either of those will be fun fights for Bresky. Nina Nunes retired and beat Cynthia Calvillo. Beat up her legs quite well, and this is just another chapter in the career of Cynthia Calvillo being a terribly developed fighter. She did wrestle some. When she wrestled, there was some success, although she did not hold Nunes down a tremendous amount. Again, the strikes here. I did think Calvillo won the third round, but the first two rounds I think have to. Well, you know what? Looking at the stats here, I'm like, do I want to subject myself to this fight again? The stats have Calvillo landing a lot more strikes than Nunes in the second round. Maybe I need to go rewatch that round because I did think Calvillo won the third. So I don't know. Maybe Calvillo did. Maybe the split decision for Calvillo is actually not that bad. Was that the rounds that Cleary had? I guess is the question because watch Cleary have like no okay 2 and 3 went to Calvillo on his card. Okay, I feel a little better about that actually. 30-27 by Judge Crail. No, I do think Calvillo won the third round. So Chris Crail on notice for a bad scorecard there. He was also on the Hill Gudunas fight. He got that right, and he got the. He didn't give a 10-8 in the Blackshear versus Zalal fight either. That's it's not amazing, not amazing. And to be clear, like judges can make mistakes, but like it's the propensity to have them, and it's the fact that there's no limit to the mistakes that judges can make that frustrates me. I have no idea what to do with Calvillo. I have had no idea what to do with her entire career. There was so much promise there when she got signed, and her development has gone down a rabbit hole of stupidity. Gabriel Benitez slammed Charlie Ontiveros into the mat and finished him after kneeing him the balls and enduring like the meme fighter that is Charlie Ontiveros. Please cut Charlie Ontiveros. He's not very good, and like I actually worry about his health. And for Benitez, put him against the winner of Trey Ogden and Daniel Zellhuber. I'm still not loving Benitez at 155. I just think that his style is kind of reach intensive, and he's not going to have reach at 5'8" at 155. But we'll see how it goes. Ode Osborne got knocked out by Tyson. I'm going to talk about these two fights, actually. Osborne Nam and Quinlan Witt in basically the same breath, because essentially the knockouts had more to do with the mistakes of the two knocked out fighters, where just kind of naked strikes were thrown. Like Witt throws this naked kick and then bam, just gets flattened. And Osborne throws a jumping knee and Nam knocks him dead. Like powerful hits from Quinlan and Nam, and we know that they both have power, so like that's not surprising. But like it was just kind of like both their opponents stuck up a sign, Wile E. Coyote style, that said "hit me," and they both died. Quinlan was really classy. He controlled himself from like hitting anything after the knockdown. That I like that. It is always a little bit weird when a fighter says he doesn't want to hurt people, though. That is always very bizarre. And I don't have much else to say about those two fights. Oh, the Quinlan PED thing. I have to talk about this real quick. First, I don't care that Quinlan took PEDs, and I appreciate that the John Jones pulsing rule is being applied to him, actually. If it's going to exist, if we're going to give it to John Jones, it should go to all the fighters. That if you tested positive for something in the past and then you test positive again in very, very small amounts, it is probably not a new ingestion. And there is some weak scientific there is no scientific evidence, I guess, that of how long a lot of this stuff will stay in your system. So I like that. At the same time, I don't like the just complete hand waving of it, because you have USADA, you do suspend fighters for months and years for taking illegal / against the rules substances. And they're like, no, it definitely came from the prior ingestion. Definitely. 100% he's not on PEDs anymore. We don't know that. We don't know that for anybody. We really don't know that for everybody. So don't frame it like that. Use terms like likely, or within the rules of the pulsing rule, or the John Jones rule, if you want to go that far and call it that. Explain it. But no, the commentary was very much just like, no, not possible. No, he's 100% clean, 100% clean. And again, I was a fan in pride. I can't exactly be like, man, steroids are immoral and shouldn't be in the game. They're going to be in the game. I don't even really care. I've always said it. I'm not even really all that big on USADA. I think it does more harm than it does good in a lot of ways, because with the supplement industry being as unregulated as it is, how vague a lot of the banned substances are, even, that it's just kind of ridiculous. But if you're gonna have it, don't gloss over this stuff. I don't know. It just kind of bugs me a little bit. Next fights, Osborne, the winner or the loser of Ulanbekov versus Nate Maness, I think is which is probably going to be Nate Maness, would be an interesting enough fight. And for Nam, the winner of Albazi versus Francisco Figueiredo, which is probably going to be Amir Albazi, I think would be a good fight. But the sixth round over at Bloody Elbow did suggest the idea of Mano Cop versus Nam. Part of me loves it. Part of me also thinks that it could be really, really boring, because while they are both pressure counter fighters, which means that they aren't necessarily super low paced, I do kind of wonder if neither of them would have the counter cues that they want from the other, and it wouldn't just kind of not really work out. Because we've seen Nam have boring fights. Nam can have extremely exciting fights or boring fights. And then finally we get Yusuf Zalal's 135 debut against Damone Blackshear. Oh, I forgot. Quinlan fights the winner of Louis Koshy and Trevin Giles, and Whip probably gets cut. He's 2-4 in the promotion and has a loss to Takeshi Sato, who has been notably just not good. And it's kind of just a little bit scary how much his defense is just really, really, really bad. He needs a Chris Lieben-esque chin for the level of defense he has. Yusuf Zalal versus Damone Blackshear. Blackshear took the first 2 rounds as Zalal was willing to grapple with him. Both guys are actually terrible at retaining top control. I'm going to say that right now, because they both lost top control. They both lost back mount for really no good reason. And then in the 3rd round, Blackshear ran out of gas, and Zalal decided to actually make it a kickboxing bout and just 10-8'd him. Although apparently not on one judge's scorecard. So 2 judges scored it a draw. I agree with that. 1 judge scored it for Blackshear. I can't say I'm like massively angry about it, because 10-8 rounds are highly discouraged. So I think it's fine. But this should be a draw. It was. This could be rebooked. Run it back. Give Blackshear a full camp. Or the other options I have is Zalal versus Ricky Tercios and Blackshear versus Ronnie Lawrence. I think would actually be a really fun fight. Talk about the Bellator fights real quick. They weren't terribly good. It wasn't great. But I will say, I forget his name now. Breno, the guy who beat Josh Hill. It's Marcus Breno. I am pretty sure. Marcus Breno looks really, really good. He looks like the real deal. A lot of power there, good wrestling. As much as Josh Hill has never been a great takedown defender, like he's one of those weird ones where like his offensive wrestling is actually pretty deep, but his defensive wrestling really, really isn't. Breno showed really well, and I look forward to seeing him here. He did fade in the third round. There was some iffy decision making down the stretch, but he is a pretty young fighter. I do believe 24 years old. He is only been fighting since he's been fighting since 2015 actually. Just kind of a slow pace. I don't know. It seems like he's recently become more serious about his fighting. And yeah, I do think that there could be big things. Not that Josh Hill is some world beater, because he's not, but there is I think a lot of bright side there to Marcus Breno. And my boy, well, not necessarily my boy, but like a guy I've met, a guy that like a guy from my neck of the woods, Aaron Jeffries, knocked the crap out of Austin Vanderford, and that's never going to get old because I don't like Austin Vanderford. I really do feel like that he's dating Paige Van Zandt is really where all the hype comes from him, because I've never thought he's all that good. Like, there's a lot of baseline physical ability to him. Beating Fabian Edwards is not a bad win, but there is not a lot to him. Like, his second biggest win is what? Ben Fodor? Maybe? Phoenix Jones? Phoenix Jones is like his second best win. And people make a huge deal about it. And I don't get it. Also, what weight class did that fight happen at? Because I'm pretty sure Fodor has fought as low as lightweight. Yeah. Not much more to say. It was a quick 1 minute 25 second knockout. Very cool. Soma and Gokhan Saricham was fine for heavyweight, but I was kind of hoping one of them to have a little bit of a breakout performance, and neither really did. They just had a very nip and tuck fight. Ilime McFarlane beat Bruna Ellen in a fight that honestly was way more competitive than it probably should be. I just never have really rated Bruna Ellen that highly. Steve Mowry got poked in the eye and it ended in no contest, which... where are the Sean O'Malley fans on that one that are going to claim that Mowry was looking for a way out? Because, like, that still is the narrative on social media, that Pedro Munoz wanted a DQ win against Munoz or against O'Malley. And, like, the thing is, like, we've had, like, what, one eye poke DQ in, like, how long? Like, Mike Jackson beating Dean Barry by DQ? That's, like, about it. That's about all I can think about in terms of, like, DQ wins via eye poke. There was no warning. Like, this, it's so weird to see guys who are like, yeah, Pedro Munoz is a super tough guy, but like he totally wanted out against O'Malley. He totally wanted out of that fight. And I get it. That like his statement of the double eye poke is untrue. One was a punch, but like the idea, it's ridiculous. His eye was swollen shut the next day. He clearly couldn't see. We can debate whether that should be a TKO stoppage or whether it was an eye poke that did it. But like, it is clear that Pedro Munoz, medically speaking, had a fucked up eye, and people are still claiming he wanted out. And then Goto Yanamuchi finishes off the night hot with a knockout of Neiman Gracie. That was really, really good. Ben Creasy also defended his flyweight title in Cage Warriors with a guillotine choke. And sadly, Rory McDonald lost on PFL. I don't think I have a lot to say about that card, other than for all the money they've spent trying to get people into the high end of the playoffs with name value. They're getting Henan Fahea, Matthias Scheffel, and Delano Taylor, and Sabado Sai in the finals. for the respective tournaments there at 170 and heavyweight. Let me pull up the full PFL brackets because I'm just saying it. I don't think in any way this is what they were hoping for. um, like at heavyweight, like they went out and they paid Juan Adams a fair amount of money, and he ended up losing here, and actually had been eliminated prior to this, but like ended up getting a second chance and ended up losing to, was it Fajera that beat him? Yeah, no, it was Scheffel who beat him, who again lost on Dana White Contender Series and is going to be fighting for $1 million. And then at light heavyweight, you ended up with Robert Wilkinson being the top guy, despite going out there and paying money for like Antonio Carlos Jr. And oh my God, Victor Pesta's run was so sad. And then at lightweight, like the troubles of Anthony Pettis have been kind of horrifying. Jeremy Stevens didn't have a very good run. So like a lot of their signings are just kind of backfiring on them. And that's been interesting. Like Rory McDonald, Ray Cooper III, they probably wanted that, and they're not good. What is this flag? Oh, it's probably the probably what they're using in place of the Russian flag. Yeah. So, rumor has it Kayla Harrison and Cyborg are going to fight in Bellator for like $3 million in combined, or pardon me, $1 million each, $2 million to the winner, so $4 million in combined purse. Please let that happen, because it's the only fight out there for either of them that is any good. So, I just want to finish off here by I read on my Discord that one of our Discord members, Doug, is in the hospital. And best wishes to him. And if he listens to this while he's there, get better soon, my man. And as per usual, the links down below: the Discord, the social medias, the places you can find the podcast, the Twitch. They're all there. Please check it out. I appreciate your viewership. You listening to me over these last probably about 70 minutes. Once we're done. About this fight card. It was a really good fight card. Bellator did let down a little bit. PFL did let down a little bit. But this fight, the UFC fight card, absolutely delivered. Was bonkers. And pretty much all the fighters deserve a round of applause. The judges can go get a swirly in a toilet. But everything else was amazing in the cage. And deserves a massive round of applause.